everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of Inconsistent-Trek, where today we talk about Star Trek replicators in Star Trek canon. But I can't really talk about the inconsistency that I believe this is without filling people in on why it would be an inconsistency. So what I wanted to do, or what I need to do, I guess, is cover how the replicator evolved throughout the history, throughout the canon of Star Trek. And we will begin with the food synthesizer, which was used in the original series and in the animated series. Now, the operation of this device, you guys should know, is a color-coded card, basically, that you insert into a reader, and it reads whatever molecular structure it is that's color-coded to that particular card, and it reproduces that protein on a dish. Now, the supplemental things like vegetables, breads, all that kind of stuff is added to the meal through the chef. Yeah, all these items are grown in the hydroponics bay and stuff that they bring aboard that the chef uses. Now, of course, if you guys remember the original series and the animated series, a chef is also on board. Now, if we go back to episodes like Star Trek Enterprise, which of course is before that time, the technology is going to regress, and there they use what's called a protein resequencer. This was basically matter that was recycled and used to reproduce food, clothing, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, basically, you ate your waste and other people's waste, but it was resequenced, and yeah, if that's what they want to call it. But the use of a chef on board things like the Enterprise, on board series like Star Trek Enterprise, was predominantly the way to supplement the meals that people got when they used the protein resequencer or stuff like that. Now, first of all, the reason I started thinking about this was because you got great cooks in Star Trek. You got people like Cisco, his dad. You got Archer. You also got bad cooks like Commander Riker, right? And one would start thinking, well, if we got food replicators, what would be the need of a person to learn how to cook or even bother with ingredients? Now, of course, as we progress, right, we get to shows like Star Trek The Next Generation, which takes place roughly 80 years after original series events, right? And well, of course, the technology has gotten better. And this is more of the device that more Trekkies nowadays are familiar with, and it is called simply the replicator, the food replicator. Now, this device uses 100% recycled energy or reserve energy to replicate whatever it is that you wanted to eat or what you want to wear or all that kind of stuff. But see, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about the replicator. First of all, the replicator works on the technology that's used in the holodeck, that's used in the transporter itself. Now, the thing about the difference between a replicator and a transporter is, and this is interesting, is because the transporter uses a higher resolution, so it's able to transport more better material than what the replicator is able to produce. It has a lower resolution, as they say. Now, we'll get into that a little later. Remember that little key point, okay? Now, another thing that people may not know about the replicator is, besides the fact that it makes clothes, it makes food, it makes ingredients, it makes parts to ships, it makes parts to shuttles and all that kind of stuff. It also has the double ability of breaking down the carbon dioxide that people breathe out aboard ship and on board star bases, and replacing that, replicating oxygen. Yeah, it does that. What can't the replicator replicate? It can't replicate antimatter, it can't replicate lithium, and it can't replicate dilithium, which is why gold pressed platinum is one of the things that's really hard for the replicator to reproduce. Another thing is that you have a bigger version of a replicator called industrial replicators. Now, the thing about industrial replicators is it takes about 15 of them. If you get about 15 of them together, you can replicate an entire starship. They can also be used on global relief efforts if there was, say, a global catastrophe on a planet. Can they replicate living matter? Now, again, because the replicator's resolution is so low, no. And come to think about it, they designed Starfleet's transporters to not be able to produce living matter from nothing. But we'll get into that inconsistency maybe a bit later, right? It was actually this episode from the Next Generation called Allegiance. That particular, I think they was an unnamed species. They were able to basically replicate using their replicators a living being. And just a side note, they didn't start actually using replicators to replicate entire starships. I didn't start seeing that until I believe it was the series of Prodigy, so way in the future. I believe the episode was Lost and Found. And see, the thing is, this is why money in the Federation is obsolete because there's no material scarcity. You can replicate anything. What is the need then for money? So let's get into the inconsistencies that I just want to cover real quick. All right, now remember I had said that they were great cooks in Star Trek. Now, right? So what would be the need of a person to learn how to be a chef, to learn how to make meals and do the ingredients and do all of the things that Cisco and his father and all this in Archer, who I can understand, I can understand. Well, maybe not Archer. What was his name? Pike. That Pike was learning how to. I can understand Pike because again, in Pike's series, they had what was called protein resequences, right? So I can understand that. But in Cisco's days, what would be the reason to learn something like that? Now, it's stated in the Next Generation and in several series actually that replicated food can taste slightly different than a person may desire. They can taste the difference between replicated food and real food. That being said, it's not just a matter of seasoning, because if it was a matter of seasoning or temperature or something like that, all of these things can be adjusted in the control systems of the replicator system, and it could come out any way you want to. So it is basically the act of replication that in some way messes with the food taste. But if that's the case and it's not able to replicate food down to how it truly tastes or how it truly feels in its consistency, right? And I just said that replicators are also used to make air or to make parts or to make clothes. Wouldn't that also by extension mean that any materials that's made from the replicator would be defective in some way? So if they made a shuttle or if they made parts that were replicated in some way, they would be defective. They would be different than naturally mined materials, just like the food tastes different than naturally grown and prepared food. And it's just not a matter of how the metal may feel or how the food is seasoned, right? So the thing is about Star Trek replicators, if that's the case, and I just said that replicators work on a basic same technology as the holodeck and the transporter, right? Does that mean then when a person is transported, when they are rematerialized, that on some level that they're not actually the same material that was dematerialized in the first place? That being said, another inconsistency when it comes to the transporter is this. If you guys remember the episode Relics, right? Scotty was able to suspend himself and another crewman in the transporter buffer for roughly 80 something years, right? Where to Scotty, time did not pass. Now, that being said, do you guys remember that episode with Barkley, right? Where when he gets transported, they know they're in this basically alternate dimension, this transporter dimension, where he was able to grab, right, the people and bring them out of that dimension. Now, the thing is, uh, both of those can't be true. You can't exist in a dimension where you are conscious, meaning you are aware of the time, and then not have time flow. So either that episode shouldn't have been made, or the episode with Relics, Scotty should have been a lot more crazy, being the only thing that existed in a transporter field for 80 something years. That was kind of my consistency, and the fact that you're not the same when you go through a transporter based on how the replicator can't really replicate certain materials. But anyway, let me know in the comments.